Why couldn't we all be in the movie theater together? I could have used y'all in my movie theater. I'll tell
It's
you that
sold
right
out.
now.
Yeah, same
Right.
here.
I was
You
at a
know, just
second week sold out screening. It was amazing. I haven't
yeah,
had
absolutely
had that experience
amazing.
before.
This has turned into a party. So we have so many different reasons to want to do this. We promised y'all a long time ago that we are making our moves in Hollywood, and every time we learn anything, we're going to turn around and teach it to you guys. And right now is more a matter of seeing something unique and beautiful and exciting and wanting to share. You know, I didn't even get to see it with my wife. We had to go back and see it the second time I was able to see it with my wife and
Yes.
my son. So we were able to
Yes.
talk about it. And that conversation is kind of what we want to share with you. So, Tananarive, you know, just get going what you want to get going.
Just welcome. I'm just very, very happy to see everybody. Please do stay till the end of this gathering slash celebration slash fellowship as we talk about Sinners, not only the emotional experience of watching Sinners, but the strategy behind Sinners and what actually the success for Sinners means for us, whether we're people who just enjoy the arts, or I see several faces of people who they themselves are in the arts, because there are a lot of implications for all of us in Sinners. But we're just going to start. Hold on one second. Let me get my slides ready.
Get your slides ready. You spent
Get
all the
my
time working
slides.
on those beautiful slides.
I know. Hold on. Hold on. I don't have it on the right one. Okay, here we go. And put it on slideshow. So yeah, let's do it. How Ryan Coogler shook Hollywood, and baby, you can too. And that's what we're talking about today. And
Yeah,
really, I don't have to tell you all. You can tell just by watching it that in some important way, Sinners is the most important Afrofuturistic film, and Ryan Coogler, the most important Afrofuturistic director
I
in
mean, look,
history.
you know that we've had some arguments about what Afrofuturism is. That I would have considered it black horror until one particular scene where he cracked the wall between past, present, and future, and created the most Afrofuturistic moment I have ever seen. And given
Well, there's a
given
picture of that
Black
moment right
Panther,
here. As a
yeah,
matter
that's
of
right.
fact,
Given
yes.
Black Panther,
Although I would
um,
still
I,
argue
I
that it
think
was
this director is
Afrofuturism.
just amazing.
Yes,
Yeah,
sorry.
I know.
We're
And
talking over each other.
things have their own definitions. So you go right ahead. I yield.
Yeah, yeah. You all know. I mean, for days people talked about that scene. Nobody had to say what scene they meant because everybody knew it was the scene that lifted us up into the movie screen and cracked our minds open. And we want to talk about that and a lot of things. But first, let's introduce ourselves for those of you who don't really know who we are. I guess I'll start since I'm talking. My name is
Sure.
Tananarive Dew. I teach Afrofuturism and Black horror at UCLA. Hopefully, you also know me as an author. My book, The Reformatory, is doing better than anything I've ever written. There isn't even a close second in terms of the success of this book. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I'm Stephen Barnes, and I've been writing Afrofuturistic novels for years. That's
How
basically
many
just what I've
years?
been doing.
I didn't catch that.
I didn't say it out loud. I didn't say it out loud. But I figure if I don't say it too out loud, time will not really notice me and start saying, "Hey, wait a minute! It's time for him to age just a little bit more." Uh, I was there at the beginning. Octavia and Chip Delaney were my direct seniors in terms of that, and Chip dropped out of the field, so Octavia and I were alone in the field for almost 20 years. And so we've had a chance to watch the flood of young black artists and filmmakers coming in. And it's like more than I can count now. And that is one of the best feelings imaginable, to feel that you helped to not only survive, but help to open doors. So that's just kind of an amazing situation. And of course, I wrote for the original Twilight Zone and Outer Limits.
Not the
Uh,
original, darling.
well, no, not the original. The second
The 80s.
iteration that was done by Phil DeGuerre and Harley
Right.
Ellison was there. I watched the original Twilight
Yes.
Zone and grew up on it and absolutely adored it. So it's to watch the field ripen the way it has just amazing, really.
A- And I just want to throw in that we're really literally in the midst of co-directing our first film because we're casting, we're looking at audition tapes, we're scouting for locations for an
That's right. We're
adaptation of,
hiring technical staff.
yeah.
Did a meeting with a special effects company yesterday that believes that they can give us CGI on the budget that we've got, because if things work out well, we'll go from the short to a feature.
And you
So
know it's horror.
we're neck deep in it now.
You know it's horror. It's The Keeper. We're doing a short film adaptation first, as it like Steve said, for proof of concept. So I cannot express how exciting it is, and I know a lot of you feel the same way, to be creating at a time when Ryan Coogler has shown us how art can lift people up so much, like from literal despair most of this year to all of a sudden, wow, we're all talking about this movie. So please do stay until the end of this Zoom. We're here to celebrate the phenomenon that is Sinners, but at the end, you're going to know the 3 lessons from Sinners that can help you create the career and cultural impact of your dreams.
And
And
and I'm going to point out the one mistake I think that Ryan Coogler made, but Tananari may have something to say
yeah,
about
I
that.
don't know if it's a mistake or not, but in any case, let's just celebrate some of the images from Sinners that, wow, I love all these characters so
And we'll
much.
let some of you actually have a chance to share your enthusiasm with us. So
Oh yeah,
we
we're
will
not going to do
eventually
all
be
the
asking
talking.
you to give us a hand up, and we'll call on you, and you have a chance to give a short share how you felt about it.
Yeah, be on deck. Have your thoughts. Ooh, Delroy Lindo. What? Honestly, we could do an entire lecture on just aspects of Sinners, and of course, Miles, this young man, what a voice. And he did an incredible job in this movie carrying what is the flagship scene, honestly, of Sinners. So let's talk a little bit about my thoughts about Sinners. And like Steve said, we were not in the same place. And usually we wait. If there's a movie coming out like where we know we both want to see it, we will wait until we're both there. But in this case, it was such a special occasion that we decided not to wait. So I got to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX at the Universal City Walk. And I was in the third row. Now, I didn't know I had bought a third row ticket, and I was very annoyed when I sat and I realized the screen was like right on top of me, which is not how I like to watch movies. But as the movie went on, I became very excited that I was in that third row because it made it just even more immersive than it already was. If you can imagine, from the cinematography, come on now, to the music. And it's no, I think, coincidence that his composer is also an executive producer on this film. So Gorhanson, I think, is his name,
Yeah,
and
music was very much a character. It was
oh yeah,
almost a musical.
almost so close to the line. And as a
Yeah.
matter of fact, oh gosh, see, I'm so excited, I'm forgetting things I'm gonna say. But absolutely the music oh, I know what I was gonna say. The inspiration from this film, I just read. Some of you may know this, Wang Dang Doodle. You mentioned Wang Dang Doodle, I think, in one of your email notes,
Yes, I
because that
did.
was what Ryan Coogler was kind of humming, singing to himself when he came up with the idea to make this movie as an homage to the influence of Black music. So it's interesting that the music came to him first before the vampires, right? And I think if we look at the movie, we could say, oh yeah, that makes sense. The aspect ratio changes. I didn't realize that kind of trickery was going on when I was sitting in that third row. I knew, I felt like I was being swept into the screen, but I didn't know the size of the screen was actually changing. So good on them because they have completely absorbed me with those aspect ratio changes. Ryan Coogler did a whole video on this that was going viral even before the movie opened. So check that
Yeah.
out. If you're a film
And
geek,
shooting it in IMAX, probably the first horror movie that's been shot in IMAX. So the screen gets wider during several sequences that were shot, and they become so immersive that it was just like falling into the screen. It was amazing.
It
When you
was,
choose stuff like that, that's filmmaking at a very, very high level to be able to understand that you can manipulate things like that, not just story and music and light and sound, but the way the screen opens and closes for the audience. Wow.
just all the things, all the things. I mean, I tell you, I got swept up into that screen. I know I'm not the only one. And I know it wasn't just Black people who felt that way. I think because I mean, one of the points of this movie is that music is universal, right? So we can feel that spirit running through us. I could smell Annie's catfish frying in that juke joint. I could smell the spilled beer, that Irish beer on the floor, and the sweat from a long walk and a hard day's work, right? I mean, all of that. And then, like we were talking about, the Afrofuturism, and for those of you who don't know, just a quick definition, the definition I use when I teach it at UCLA is basically the Black speculative arts. It's a very broad category for me, which is not only film, but it's music, it's comics. So it includes science fiction, fantasy, and horror. So yes, Sinners is a horror film, but it's also Afrofuturism. And one of the real touchstones of Afrofuturism is that we're in communication with our past, present, and future in the same moment, a single shared moment in time. So yes, that juke joint scene may be the best example of Afrofuturism in music that I've ever seen committed to the screen. I mean, there's a lot of great work out there, but that
Well,
specific part of the past, present, and future of music specifically colliding the way it does in the movie.
it really did. I mean, I know that they planned that scene for weeks. Now, it looked to me like there were a couple of digital edits in there, and there was certainly CGI enhancement of the scene. But they also said they rehearsed it for weeks and they shot it in a single day. So I don't know how many times they had to do it to get everything together. If it was all shot in one take, or if it was shot in one take and then they edited some things together. They have the right to do that as long as it's seamless. You're still immersed in this moment and pulled in. You don't necessarily, I didn't even notice that it was a single take the first time. I was
No,
just
me
swept
either.
away that every time you get a cut,
Swept.
there is a change in the way you react. It's like now I'm looking at this, now I'm looking at this. But when it's a continuous take, it's almost like being pulled into a trance. So as
Mhm.
far as I'm concerned, that was magic at that moment. That was
I think
actual
there was some
magic.
trance stuff in there, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
Like
you bet there
embedded
was.
in the soundtrack, and the roof was literally on fire. I mean, all the things were happening at the same. So I'm hearing the roof, the roof is
The
on
roof
fire.
is
I
on
mean,
fire.
so I was like, honestly, mind blown. And it is leaving IMAX. People are saying in the chat it'll be leaving IMAX soon because of a Marvel movie. So if you have an opportunity to see it in IMAX, you should try. There aren't that many theaters that have the 70 millimeter capacity. I think there are only 10 in the country. So I was lucky to see it in one of those. But not to spend all the time talking about that one scene. I'll tell you when I knew he was taking us somewhere different in terms of that journey with music, even before the juke joint, was when Delta Slim is in the car. They're passing through the cotton fields. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I see you nodding, sir. They're in the cotton fields. They pass the chain gang. And Delta Slim tells this heartbreaking story against the backdrop of cotton fields as far as the eye can see. And this chain gang, which to me just reminds me of mass incarceration and how that's still going on, right? And then he tells this terrible, terrible story of a lynching. And what a wonderful actor Delroy Lindo is. His face is imbued with so much grief and sorrow. And then he's like, all you can do is hum. And we were watching the literal birth of the blues in that moment. And I'm not saying that it happened in that year, but that was the visual personification
No, what
of
you're
how the
saying,
blues was born
and
in
that's
the
another
improv of it.
moment that is magical, sweetheart. You're talking alchemy. You take
Yes.
pain and you turn it into art. And the people who understand it then are your tribe, and they're feeling it. They're lifting out of the misery of their day-to-day moments, but finding a
Yes.
way to embrace their humanity, their sensuality, and you saw several different ways of doing it. You saw people doing it with religion, in the church, and there were several different religions represented there. You had and several different cultures represented, whether the Asian culture, the Chinese culture, the Choctaw
Yeah,
culture.
that was cool.
You saw the Klan with their images of Christianity. You saw those robes. You saw the father, preacher boy's father, who's trying to save him from sin. But at the same time, you're seeing that Christianity keeping them as slaves. That this was for people who were out in the fields. And preacher boy, the question of how do you break free of that without destroying yourself? So the movie it's a sigil. It's symbols upon symbols upon symbols that are lined up with a single driving storyline, but there are probably six different ways you could dissect it. And to me, that's real evidence of mastery at that point. I really have to bow down to Coogler at this point. I mean, we
And that's
saw
and
the unbroken take in Creed. I'd never seen anybody do that in a boxing match. For him to take that same skill and turn and what he did with it in Sinners, unbelievable.
public service announcement. Check out the chat and you can save the chat. Maybe you've never saved a chat in your life, but you can save a chat. There are three dots at the top of your chat box, usually, especially if you're on a desktop. If you click on that, the first thing you see is save chat. Between all the links and comments in there, you are definitely going to want to save this chat because between all of this, and I love music. That's why when I wrote My Soul to Keep, I wanted music to be a character. My character, Dawit, was a musician, sort of a timeless musician. But I haven't felt that transported into a film in Sinners since probably it goes back to seeing the original Star Wars with my dad in a movie theater during that Luke's Jedi battle. That and that was just because of the visuals, and I had never seen anything like that before. This was different though. This was just cinema magic. And what he does is he's laid down a bridge really for us to know our ancestors. It felt very personal. And the depiction of sharecroppers, let's just talk about that for a second. He lent more humanity to the sharecroppers working in those cotton fields in 20 seconds of footage than I think maybe in all the rest of cinema history. I know there are examples and you can say it in the chat, but just the human, hey, what you doing? What you doing? Oh, hey, this is my wife, meet my wife. Like he's basically lifting that veil because even if we're descended from people who did sharecropping, we often can't imagine ourselves in their place, right? Because of that divide of time, that divide of socioeconomic status for some of us. So yes, yes, yes. Oh, if you want to save the chat, if you see your chat box, there are three dots in the top right-hand corner. If you click on those three dots, the first option is save chat. So yeah, I mean that goes to the whole question of like why we like to say enslaved people rather than slaves, because slave that connotes a position that someone has. You were sort of born to this, and if you were a person, you were kidnapped and you were enslaved. That's the distinction. So Kugler doesn't give us sharecroppers. He gives us people who work in the cotton fields. And who joke and make plans for the night and race to meet their quotas, and just so much like history, realism. I mean, I could do an entire course on Sinners, so I'm just going to focus on a few key scenes or characters because I know we're all feeling the impact of this film, and I don't want to hog it up, honey. Just tell me if I'm hogging it up. We already
No,
talked
no,
about.
no, no, no. I figured that the best thing for us to do was for one of us to take lead and the other one comment. So you were ready
Okay,
to go on
I'm
this,
ready to go.
on relatively short notice. So please, just, take it away.
Okay, so I'm writing a novel right now called Bear Creek Lodge, which has a backstory in Black Hollywood history. And because of that, I've been watching a lot of like old silent films that were called race films, race pictures back in the day. These were on a parallel track as Hollywood, right? These were independent producers. The most famous is Oscar Micheaux, but he wasn't the only one, where they would like cobble together a cast and a crew and they would just shoot their dang movie. So while Hollywood was only depicting Black people out of the minstrelsy era, where you were either a minstrel literally in blackface, or you were playing what unfortunately I would call a coon, like, that kind of thing. And like you're the comic relief, you're not bright, and you're always, always, always a servant. Hattie McDaniel, bless her, she won that Oscar for Gone with the Wind, but she was never able to get out of that typecasting as a servant. And believe me, she wanted to. Okay. So basically, Sinners structurally reminds me of those race films. They were often cautionary tales, right? Where you would have avoid vices like drinking and gambling and dancing, stay close to the church. This has often been the message of Black filmmakers, those cautionary tales to help you survive, literally, because if you walk too far out of the line, someone's going to shoot you down. But he turns that cautionary tale on its head, because the fact is that although Sammy did reject his father's way in the church, he went out and pursued his dream. He was playing music into old age. I mean, what artist wouldn't want to be able to pursue their art into old age? Living authentically, he kept his soul literally because he never turned into a vampire. So he
There's
will.
one of the things that I can comment about that he is told. I forget whether it was Blue, it was Smoke. I think it was Smoke that said it. He'd never met a happy musician. Okay,
Mhm.
and the idea that road is a killer, right? But Sammy at the end owned his own place. That was
Yes, he
his
did.
bar. That was it, which means that he was able to put down some roots. He could easily have a wife and children,
Yeah, we don't know.
grandchildren, because so we can imagine a happy ending, for him. The idea that you can spin pain into art, and that art does not have to, the pain does not have to destroy you. That it's possible to build a life with it, coming from a place where they give you wooden nickels, which means you can never save up enough money to get away. At some point, you just have to take it and go. At some point, you just have to do what you do. And it reminded me of what was that? The Cotton Club,
Mm.
where Larry Fishburne, tells Gregory Hines, who wants to get a gun and go kill this gangster. It's like, I have to be in the underworld. That's all that's been left for me. But you've got your tap dance. Where do you dance? Okay,
Right. Where do you
so
dance in that
Smoke,
movie?
Smoke, and his brother in Stack respected the artistry. Did not want this life for that boy. Did not want the gangster life for that boy. I'll shoot you if I'll kill you if I find out you're doing this. They knew that they had limitations, but they had the vision to see that the future held something different for those of us who can take that pain and not be broken by it or turned into a gangster by it. They wanted to create a place for us. And I think to a huge degree, this movie, Sinners, was a place for us. It was aimed at us. Like Jordan Peele talked about what he did with Get Out. It's fact the world comes along. If you can spin your pain into art and create a place for yourself, you go deep enough into the specificity that it emerges at the universal. And
Absolutely.
that is the
And
dream of art. Anyway, let me
that's what
shut
the
up.
art
Keep going.
attests
Keep
to.
going.
And I just wanted to finish that point about the cautionary tale and the church, because Aretha Franklin came up against that with her secular music. I mean, this is a story of Black music also, but that second tag, don't tell me you didn't wait till the very, very end, like the last credit has rolled. They go back to the church where Sammy's face is unscratched. So this is before the night with the vampires. He is sitting there with his guitar singing This Little Light. And you can interpret that scene however you want. Obviously, art is in the eye of the beholder. He can't explain to every single one of us what everything means. So we have to decide what we think it means. And for me, it felt like he was making it clear that the church launched him,
Yes.
helped nurture his inner light. And so while he may have rejected his father and the church, Coogler wants us to remember, oh, this is where it started. And I think he very deliberately did that. And of course, that 1992 credit sequence you referred to, that's actually real life blues musician Buddy Guy. So look up his music. He was a favorite performer of Coogler's uncle. So Coogler went out of his way to make sure he was included. And he's been going around talking about how his contemporaries, B.B. King and them, have gone on. But they told him, listen, if you outlive us, make sure the blues lives on. So for him, this is a dream come true. And Coogler has given him, I mean, what do we all want? But to be remembered, right? So he's given such a love letter to not just the past that's gone, but the people who are still practitioners of that past, who are still here. Real quick, in terms of that last scene too with Buddy Guy, 1992, this is an important year for Coogler. He comes back to this year very often. You might ask yourself why. That's the year of the Rodney King insurrection in LA. So that might be important. And even as an elder musician, as Steve said, he has his whole life. But he spoke for me when he said he stopped them before they left. They said, you know what? Before it all went down, I'm paraphrasing, that was the best night of my life. And I was like, yes, that was the best night of my life too.
Well, look. Why was it the best night of his life? It was the best night of his life because he saw his future at that moment. That was the first time he was being introduced to a crowd, and they
Yeah.
felt him. They
Mm-hmm.
felt him. He knew he felt the blues, but what he couldn't know is whether or not other people would feel what he felt. And that
Yes.
was the first time I remember that moment in my own life, the first time I stood on a stage and recited a poem, as it were, in my high school, and I saw people react to it in a way that they'd never reacted to me before. They saw me in a way they'd never seen me before, and at that moment, I saw a door open in my life. I could see it. I could feel it. So I know what it feels like to sing your heart out with other musicians backing you up and people dancing, and quite frankly women looking at you like, oh, suddenly they were seeing him as a man in a way they
Yes.
never had before. I mean, that is, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that sense that you can give from your heart and your community is going to support you? Tell us your truth and we will put a roof over your head and feed you. Every culture
Celebrate
has
you.
griots.
Celebrate you. Yes. Yes.
Celebrate you. Yes, your stories matter, and they matter a lot. We'll get to that in a bit.
So here's the biggest hat trick to me of this whole film is that I don't know about y'all, but I walked out full of joy. I mean, I was mesmerized. I was actually in the theater for 20 minutes charging my phone. So I stood there like I was literally hypnotized. And I tried to like join a circle of people talking about it, but I couldn't even think of what to say. I was just processing, right? But this is the biggest hat trick. If you take the vampires out of Sinners, what is this story? This is a story of the night the Klan came and attacked a prospering business and burned it down and killed everybody. Now, that is a story that many of us, especially if we're African American, have literally in our family tree. I have that story on two sides of my family of the people who were jealous. Okay, they're jealous. This is where these attacks came from. There was always a ruse about it. Oh, they robbed somebody, they raped somebody. Like you remember the scene where they talked about all the reasons it's dangerous to have white people enter your space because if someone steps on somebody's foot or looks at a white woman the wrong way, they will burn that whole place down. And they did. They did it in Tulsa. They did it in Rosewood. Those are just the biggest ones, but it was something that happened around the country. So he's making us remember this. He's making us remember these Klan attacks, these mass Klan attacks. But because he added the fantastic element of the vampires, we're not seeing it as the Klan burning down the place. It's vampires attacking the place. They're not white, they're vampires, and some of them were black. So he takes the racial violence that triggers us, which can create trauma porn, which nobody wants to watch that for fun. Nobody wants to watch trauma porn for fun, okay? But he took it out. I call it the monkey paw method. When you minimize racist violence against Black people, you're telling one story on the surface, but you could literally do a deep dive into so many other aspects of the film. I mean, that's very similar to Jordan Peele's approach to Black storytelling, is to minimize that racist violence, not the violence. There's plenty of violence, but you minimize the racist violence against Black people. And then there's this revisionist twist, where you're mowing everybody down at the end. Now that, maybe that happened in some places, but that wasn't typically how it went. And if it did,
Yeah,
it was
I
not
kind of
great.
guess that if he had not had vampires in there, it would have been about the smokestack twins helping the community fight back.
Mm.
And he decided that that was not the route that he wanted to go down.
And I just want to, I know we want to let people, because the chat is just on fire, and we want to let people speak at a certain point. But
Yeah,
I do
should we
want to
let
talk
people
a little
start
bit
raising
about,
their hands and we can
well,
choose
they
a
can
few?
raise their hands. I'm going to talk a little bit about the women in Sinners. Let's talk about
Please do.
Annie and how exciting it was to see a larger, darker skinned woman portrayed not only as Smoke's love interest, but as such a powerful force in the story. That person who represents, I mean, not in my family, which I feel kind of robbed of. That hoodoo tradition never made it to my grandmother's, or they never exposed me to it. But it does resonate with so many people. And she's so powerful that it was really hard for us to understand why she had to die, but she had read the bones. Someone pointed this out in social media. She had read her future. She knew what her future was. So her two priorities became protecting as many Smoke and her people and making sure she didn't turn. So those vampires would not have her power, I think, right? So there's the hoodoo, Mary. If you know your history of the one drop
I
rule,
know the hoodoo expert, the woman who was the expert
Annie.
who advised. No, the movie who
Oh,
was
oh,
the
I'm sorry.
technical advisor for the movie said when Ryan Coogler first talked to her, her first comment was, "I don't do horror." So you can
Mm,
see that he had to convince her that this was going to be respectful.
yeah.
And from what I have heard from practitioners of those arts, they felt like this was the first time they were ever portrayed on screen in a compassionate and realistic way that allowed them to express their power without making them into two-dimensional characters.
Honey, years ago, remember Forrest Whitaker was going to direct the Good House, which that would have been so amazing. But like meeting one, he's like, we're not going to use Vodun for this reason because it had been so badly. Like you're gonna have to make up like some kind of practice because we are not going to be crapping all over Vodou in this movie. And I think Ryan Coogler really did pick that lock. He figured out how to do it in a way that was respectful. So big ups on that. Um, Perline, we don't have to get into that. There's some interesting things Coogler does with sexuality that enables him to get past the
Yeah, he is
frankly.
the only director and producer who's ever been able to have black men be sexual on screen and have that movie earn over $100 million domestic. He did that for the first time in 2015 with Creed, and then it was done in Creed 2 and 3, but by other directors under his leadership. But then now in Sinners, he did the same trick, and he did it by turning sexuality into sensuality. You'll notice that there is no nudity.
Hardly any
In
nudity.
any of those love scenes he did in all four of those movies, there's no nudity. So he doesn't push those buttons, but he still gives us a rich experience of a man and a woman bonding. So it's like he's brilliant. Nobody
And
else has
still
ever managed to
sexy,
do it.
still sexy, still raw, still a little even shocking at times
Yeah.
without the nudity. So that was, and when she was singing, Perlene was singing, I have never wanted to stomp my feet so hard in a movie theater. I have to go back to a movie theater where people would be stomping their feet because I feel like I got gypped at Universal City Walk. I'm just going to say that. And Grace, of course, the Asian American woman having that, and the couple and the family having that portrait of allyship rendered with realism. For people who grew up in Mississippi and know that, but they can walk between the black and the white side of the street. They're sort of in between. That kind of
Yeah, you
touching.
hadn't you had to point out to me that one
Mm-hmm.
side of the street was white, the other side was black. I do not know if that was literally the truth in those towns, but it was a fantastic visual metaphor. And that's the kind of visual symbolism that you're going to need if you're going to do movies. You have to
Yeah.
figure out, how do I represent this? Even if people don't see it, that image of Grace walking between those worlds represented that the Chinese Americans were able to work with white people, but they were also willing to serve black people. Tananari wondered whether or not the prices were the same, which is an
Yeah, I don't
interesting
know.
question. We don't
And I
know.
forgot to talk about Mary. I forgot to talk about Mary. Some of you youngins don't know, but back in the day, there was a one drop rule. And you best believe, as white presenting as Mary was, and as white presenting as we consider her today, and we would be like laughing her out of the audition if she was trying to come audition for a role as a Black woman, right? Back in that day, like if her husband found out about that Black blood, she would be lucky if she only got divorced. And don't let the baby come out too brown, which was the problem sometimes with passing, because sometimes that pigment skips a generation or two, and now you've got a brown baby and some splaining to do, as they used to say. So that's and I'm going to wrap up quickly and let Otis and there are a couple of other participants, but really quickly, the idea of an invitation. I want to talk about this. The reason Coogler chose vampires, he said, was because he really likes the idea of that temptation, right? Of all the genres, werewolves, zombies, he likes that idea of the temptation. And he really did resurrect this invitation thing. I haven't seen used that often since I have to go back to Fright Night, where it was a big part of the plot that the mother was inviting the vampire in because he was good looking, and the son was like, yeah, you see, he's a vampire. So this idea of the invitation resonates with a lot of people, not just because it's humorous, like that scene with cornbread. I have seen memes about it, people recreating it on TikTok. It resonates with so many people, but also, frankly, in the wake of last year's election, when a lot of cookout invitations have been revoked, literally, people are questioning allyship and assumptions you've made about people you thought were on your side, or people who would think the way you think, and you find out that's not the case, which was the question Jordan Peele was addressing when he did Get Out in a different way, right? So it's like that invitation, that's more than a word. And since we have three hands up, let's go ahead. I know Otis was up first. So where is
Yeah,
Otis?
Otis, put your hand up,
Now
boy.
we have to find people and unmute them because I muted everybody.
Where is Otis?
I don't even think I
He,
let
he
people unmute themselves.
he's
So
going to
here
have
he is.
to raise his hand again
Okay,
because
I'm
we're
asking him to
going to go
unmute.
to Sion
Wait,
Raze.
but I still have to unmute people. So,
I'm
okay, come
still
on.
here.
Oh, he's here. Okay, but
I'm
He's
who's,
here.
there.
I've been here.
you'll be next. You'll
Yeah,
be
I'm here.
next.
I'm here. They
Okay.
fixed whatever the unmuting
Okay.
problem was.
Okay, well,
Okay.
let
Uh,
me add you to
So
spotlight.
Otis, yeah. So go ahead. So you're first. You're zipping
okay.
around. I'm having a hard time finding you. Oh, there he is.
I'm here.
Okay.
He's
Yeah,
here.
there I am.
He's here.
Just a comment here. Having done my own events, I really felt like connected when they started setting up that juke, because that's exactly what it's like. You pick out your location, you got your food, you got your musicians that you picked out by hand. And like if you've ever worked at a rave or an underground or any kind of big party, it's exactly that. And that was like magical for me. But then I thought about it a minute further, and that's not just, they're not just showing throwing a rave or a speakeasy. That is also analogous to shooting a film.
Mhm.
Hmm.
What that group sat up and got together and everything did is exactly what shooting a film is like.
Well,
I
I can
felt
tell
that.
you
I felt
that the
that.
moment I fell in love with that movie was the moment when I guess it was Stack said, "Y'all ready to eat? Y'all ready to drink?
Yeah.
Y'all ready to sweat till y'all stink?" And I just fell out. I could not believe that.
Yes,
And it
I
just
am, and
Mm-hmm.
fix me a plate.
suddenly I'm in that world. You bet after a
Mm-hmm.
week of after 6 days of working in the cotton fields,
Sharecropping. Yeah.
Saturday night, what do you need to feel human after that? So thanks you very much, Otis. We're going to
And
move on to
and
the next
and
person.
no,
Mm-hmm.
cornbread did not accuse Annie of using old grease. Whoo, I was so mad. I almost yelled at the screen. Please unmute, sir.
Hi, yes,
Hi.
Zion Ray's here. Something that I love that Ryan accomplished with this film, for it being a horror film. I love horror films where I care about the characters, when I care about if they're going to live or die. And he did such an excellent job with the world building by developing all the characters as they were establishing the juke joint. We got to meet everybody, know about their lives long before all the tragedy happened. So people left the theater feeling bad for Cornbread's wife. And she had one scene, but it's because we got to meet everyone and really explore their world. And I love that so much in horror. It's hard to pull off. A lot of people have
We
been,
think about the moment they gave her, Sean. it's like, we're gonna let you, maybe she'll let you do, unnamed sex act, for money. And he's all angry. She kind of says, "Well, how much money y'all talking about?" He said, "Oh, you got a good woman there." It's
Yeah,
like you could feel the layers. You could feel the
Yes.
exactly.
layers of these people who grew up. They've known each other since childhood. You could feel that. And
Absolutely.
that sense of community. It's been a long time since I've seen anything like that. And wow. Anyway,
They did a
thank you,
great
buddy.
job with that. And thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to bring up, hold on, I'm going to add
I
this
don't know
link.
who iPhone is. Who's iPhone?
Okay,
Introduce
iPhone, let's
yourself.
go.
I think that's me. Is that me?
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, here I am. Hey, how's it going? I love y'all.
And your name is
Jason.
Jason.
Great.
Okay, Jason.
Yeah,
Welcome to
nice
the
to meet you.
barbecue.
Thank you. We've been Facebook friends for a long time, but
Yeah.
so I was just I love the movie like all around. One of the things that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit is the women had so much agency throughout the whole film, and then at the end, pretty much everybody died except for Haley Seinfeld's character. And I was just kind of trying to wrap my head around that and think about like how that could have been a little bit different. Like I would have loved to see one of the women live on, and
I think that might be an homage to the real event we know this movie is evoking, which is when they burn down the joint, when they shoot up the town, when they air bomb you in Tulsa,
yeah,
everybody dies,
yeah,
and
no, that
you
makes
feel
sense.
that loss.
Yeah, no, that
That's
makes
what I
sense.
think he's doing there.
But the one thing that the only like plot hole that I could kind of see was, and I'm not good at remembering the names of characters, but the daughter of the Asian couple,
Hmm.
both their parents die, and we never get any resolution on that. And she was kind of invoked as this emotional thing, and I was kind of expecting Smoke to go
Well,
back and pick her up,
look,
or
this is a sign of a well done story where you can have a totally minor character and you can feel that they have complete lives and you wonder,
yeah.
wow, who were they yesterday? Who are they going to be tomorrow? What's happened to her in 5 years?
Mhm.
That's good writing and that's
Yeah,
good
Yeah,
acting.
yeah,
absolutely.
for
So
sure.
And
yeah,
thank you for that. And
thank you,
we're gonna put up Derek. Hold on one second. Let me add your spotlight. How you doing, sir?
Derek. Unmute yourself, boy. There
Okay,
you go.
sorry,
Oh, there you
sorry.
got it. Okay, good.
Yes. I'm great. I just want to say really quickly, this is phenomenal film. Three things I want to say really quick. I saw it in 70 millimeter IMAX
Yes.
here in New York at 10 a.m. The 10 a.m. showing was the only one I could get into, and it was packed, which says a lot. The second
Yeah.
thing I want to say is that Ryan is so well written, and Ryan took such a long time developing community in the film that the audience became a part of the community as well. And there was applause 5 times in the showing that I saw, which you really don't see applause anymore. In
Mm.
films, when you go to watch a film, there's no one really applauds anymore. And the applause. And the third thing I just want to say is the scene with the garlic is a phenomenal scene of like who's the vampire, and it reminded me so much of The Thing, but it's
Yes.
well
Yes.
That's
written.
exactly what I was thinking.
And I think that's exactly what he was thinking when he
Oh
wrote
yeah.
it.
Oh yeah.
But it's just brilliantly done because people have tried to match that thing scene, but nothing as well as this. This is a
It is.
phenomenal.
I agree.
It
And
really
thank you
is.
so much for that. And we're gonna
And
bring the
you're
next
a
person on just
you're a
because
creator, Derek.
it's
So
so fast.
start
Yes.
thinking about grounding your work in something that deep.
Absolutely.
And
Angelica?
oh, can I not add this spotlight? All right. Well, Angelica, please do speak up. I don't know if I have the
Yeah,
capacity to
she's. I
add
guess it's
you.
because she's not on a visual.
Oh, I see. So we'll hear you if you unmute, if you want to make a comment, Angelica. And if Angelica's not here, we'll go next to Melody Cooper. I can add Melody Cooper spotlight. Oh, let me ask you to unmute. Hey,
Hey, let me turn off my
I
It's like
understand.
an alarm when I had a meeting, so I got in a little late. So I missed some of the things you talked about. So you might have already mentioned what I loved about there's so many things. And as a writer director, it was like being in catnip, the whole thing.
Yes.
But the visual symbolism and how it affects the subconscious of how we take in the movie, especially like even when we first
Would
see
you mention one visual symbol that really struck you?
one. Ooh, okay. Well, the first one that struck me were the two vultures flying over the brothers when we first see them. They're in the background. They're oversized. Real vultures wouldn't be that big, but
Mm.
it's their over their heads. It's a kind of it's foreshadowing of what's going to happen to them. And I thought, okay, where he's going to be playing, he's telling us, he's letting us know, pay attention, because I'm going to be playing in this world. And then that the Dutch angle, that low angle, wide shot of the vampires marching, that I can't get that out of my head because Dutch angle gives you that sense of unease. And it was just their eyes aglow. And that's something I want to talk about as well. But also that deep space, long road shot moving us down the road through cotton and out of cotton.
This is a Dutch angle for people who don't know. I mean, basically, that's a Dutch.
Slightly askew.
Yeah.
And his was down, it was also down low and Dutch angle. So it was like, it felt like they were coming at you, but not. And then that deep space road, that long road they're on to get us past and through cotton, that time in our history, I thought that just moved me. And the main thing that I caught, do you remember when they had the rattlesnake in the back of the car?
Yes.
The truck, that snake had point golden little tiny points. And throughout the movie, different characters at different times have those points in their eyes when they're being tempted, when they're being corrupted. And
Wow.
And I looked for it. There's only one
Okay.
character that never has it, and it's Annie.
Yes.
Never has it.
Excellent.
And it's
Excellent.
a little thing, but that's not something you might notice consciously.
No, I think that the best symbology is unconscious. You never see it. It's getting to you.
Melody,
Thank you.
you know, we could do a whole webinar with you, but we have so many people with their heads up. I'm going to add Zeke next. Zeke, please unmute. And what would you like to share? Thank you for all that, Melody.
How you doing,
Melody Cooper.
everybody? Yeah, I really enjoyed this film. It's definitely the best film I've seen all year. It probably will stay that way. What moved me, of course, I know it moved a lot of people. The scene where the juke joint transforms from past, present, and future. I thought that scene blew me away. At first, I was like, wow, they're going there. He's going there for this. Okay, good. And then I was just like, okay, this could be silly. This could be dumb. But it was amazing. And in the hands of a different director, that scene could have been awful. But it was mind-blowing. There's only two other times when I've seen a movie where it's blown me away. When I was a kid, the first time I saw Superman fly in Superman with Christopher Reeve blew me away. The second time was when I saw 1989 Batman, and the first time the Batmobile streaks through Gotham City.
Look, man, film
Got
thrives on the images that you've never seen before.
Right.
If you can choreograph an image that you've never seen before that has meanings, that is cinema. And what Coogler did was create an image that would not have worked the same on television. So it demands to be seen on a big screen. So he's thinking about the commerciality of it at the same time he's thinking about the art of it, at the same time he's thinking about the historicity of it, the symbology of it, the mythic quality of it. It's like that's a higher level mind.
Right.
He was in his groove with that. I hope he's got more left. I hope that, but if that's the best he's ever going to do, he's still broken the game clean over.
Exactly. And there's just a couple of other things that I wanted to point out. I noticed someone said earlier that this was like one of the few horror movies where you cared for the characters. And I too left that theater what about Grace's daughter? I was like feeling bad leaving the theater, like, what about Grace? And it reminded me of, the controversy, not really controversy, of the Chronicles of Narnia. What happens to Susan? Susan is just gone, and it's like, what, and Neil Gaiman wrote that story, the matter with Susan, and I felt that with Grace's daughter. I was just like, where's Grace's daughter? And I was hoping to see her in that mid-credit scene. So that, and the Delta Slim story, when they're driving down the road and they're going past the chain gang, killer, yes, killer.
Yeah.
And that reminded me of the Captain Quint story that he tells in Jaws, where he
Right.
talks about the sinking ship, and it's just like, oh, this is so brutal, so brutal.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Coogler nailed it.
Masterful.
He knows what he's doing.
He did the thing.
He
He
did the
did the
Thank
thing.
you.
He's
thing.
a filmmaker who knows what he's doing.
Thank you so much. We do have
Timothy
so many people
Nolan.
who want to oh wait, hold on. I clicked on the wrong one. Welcome back. There he is.
Hey there, unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, unmute. Another click.
Let me ask again. Maybe there's a prompt if I ask.
There
Okay,
you are.
can you hear me?
There you go.
Yes,
There you
yes,
go.
we can.
Okay. First off, I have to say I have never had been glued to the edge of my seat with a movie like this at all, especially a horror film.
Why do you
Everything
think that
about
happened? Can you think of the first moment when you knew you were totally in the movie?
oh boy, I would say at the very beginning of the film, just since we're introduced to the twins.
Okay, that's cool. That's good.
Wow. Well, great. Well, I mean, yeah, transformative experience for everybody. And I
Mhm.
see in the chat everybody's feeling the same way. And yeah. So thank you for that, Mr.
Yeah.
Nolan. Let me go in and add Dr. Loana. Oh, I can't put you on. You can unmute, but you can't be spotlighted because you don't have your video on, which is your choice, but feel free to share.
Well, you caught me on my commute home from work, so there's that.
Pay attention.
So so first of all, like the juke joint scene and understanding that it was inspired by Ernie Barnes, some of the movements within that scene, even before like piercing the veil, were really like spot on in terms of being evocative. But the other thing that really like struck me was the relationship between Stack and Mary. I have to say I really appreciate where she was coming from when she said that, as much as he wanted her to pass and enjoy a white life, that wasn't what she wanted. And it's terrible that they had to die in order to be able to be together. But, there's like mixed feelings with that. And then all of the women in it had so much agency and strength. And I know people are worried about Lisa, but the way that she presented when she first came on the screen, I think she's going to be fine. She is not
Agreed.
think she is not play. And then the other
No.
part, when I realized I was transfixed, it was in the very opening when they were in the church and preacher boy was walked in and his father was talking to him, and you could see like the images that turned out to be like flashbacks of things we were gonna see in terms of the foreshadowing, because it really like sucked me in and made me want to know like what had he gone through to get to where he was. And I appreciate like us not knowing whether or not he actually dropped the guitar until we saw the mid-credit scene.
Mm. Yeah,
We
so
saw
much
it right.
appreciate. And thank you for that. That is, yes, all of what you said. How about you, sir? Douglas?
That's me. Hi.
All right.
Yeah, you were one of
Um,
the first people to show up today,
I've been
so we
watching
have
you
to
the
yeah,
hear
whole
from
well,
you.
time.
first of all, I've been reading both your books for a long time.
Oh, thank you.
Been reading you, Stephen, since Karate Illustrated days when you used to wear the gi and stuff. So like it's been a while. But talking about the movie, and there's so much to talk about the movie, I'm going to limit myself to the music. And I'm going to start by talking about the guitar that was up in the pulpit in church, which is kind of like a multiplier for when the movie first came on and they were talking about this is what music is for Black people. I think the fact that the guitar was on the pulpit shows that, yeah, it just reinforces that. And although the juke joint, the Afrofuturistic scene was a really good scene, I also want to go ahead and point out that I thought, I cannot remember the sister's name that was singing, but when everybody started stomping
Yes.
in unison, that was church. Okay, I mean, like I know it might have been a secular situation, but if you depends on what church you were, brother, then I suppose. When the spirit hit people, that's what was going on. And again, I just think that just reinforces the fact that Ryan did a wonderful job bringing the music in more than anybody else ever did in the movie. So
Yeah, we're seeing a level of skill there. I will tell you the honest truth. I walked to that movie feeling a little bit depressed because I thought to myself, I will never do anything that good.
Oh, stop. I mean,
but then after I recovered from it, it's like, let me use this as an inspiration to do my best. I'm going to try. I can't, I can't not try, but I could feel it. I felt that he'd gone deeper into something rooted that I don't have in the same way, but I've got, it's like I have to find my gifts and bring out, my gifts at the same level, and then it's up to other people to decide. But I'm telling you something, he did it. He pulled it off. We were seeing a piece of art right there.
It's not just him, but the people that he brings in. Like, like you get sucked into that movie because of the way people dressed, because of what Ruth Carter does. You get sucked into that movie because of the way everything looks, because Beachler. I mean, and the music because of Goranson. It's not, I mean, it's him, but he knows who to pick, how to.
Yes, he does. It takes a village. Let's move on to our next person. Thank you so much.
I had someone on deck and they disappeared.
That was me. I think when you spotlight, this is Faye. When you spotlighted me, maybe it took away my hand or lowered my hand.
Oh, okay.
Is it okay if I go first?
Yeah. No, please, you were next.
Oh my God. So I've been listening to this, and sometimes I get talking too much, but I won't hear because I know there's a lot of people. But I wrote on Facebook that was not a movie, it was a moment. And I think that movie has changed everything. It rewrote the old settled narratives about Black people, that white authors and people that are in the dominant culture have kind of put on us, overlaid on us. It exploded those narratives and actually created new narratives. It even exploded some of the same narratives that some Black people say, well, we're religious, we're in the church, and the church is all this, and he completely turned that around or made us think about that a little more. And it just reminded me of that Audre Lorde quote about you can't dismantle the master's house using his tool. He not only smashed the house, but he built a big new one. I will also say about just how good that movie was and art and the creation of art. I just remember one short story I wrote and that got into America's Best short stories or whatever for mysteries. But
whatever.
I felt that short story was channeled to me. It wasn't like I was writing it. I felt like I was hearing from the ancestors. And so I would say that, when people say, Steve, you said, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can do that as a writer. I think you can, man. You just got to just get in the flow where you create that channel.
Well, let me ask you a question, Faye.
Okay.
Do you feel inspired personally? Is this going to affect your work?
Oh my gosh, you just gave me chills with that question. It is totally going to affect my work. It gets me inspired. We can break all these old tired narratives that have haunted us in film and literature. We are creating our own literature. We are not trying to duplicate what you've already done. All that crap. It's just like squirrels in
Fantastic.
a map. Yeah.
Great.
All right, thanks.
So, okay. So
That
T,
is beautiful. And I
do we want
am,
to get another couple people in there before
yeah,
we
I'm
move on?
heartbroken at how many people have their hands up because I just know we won't be able to get to everybody. So if we don't get to you, be sure to mention, I mean, this chat is a masterclass in itself. I mean, what's happening
Yeah,
over there.
and one of the things we have a free social media site called LifeWrite, and you can go to www.lifewrite.com and continue this conversation there. So Leone.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I was so
Oh,
late. I had my phone right here, but I forgot I had it on silent for a wedding that I went to over the weekend. So I was like, oh, I missed my notifications. But I want to say, I usually, when I'm watching a movie, I like to predict everything. I could not predict anything. Um, One moment that was just like cool for me is because I like watching documentaries, is in the beginning, when what was his name? The Sammy was in the red car. And I said, oh, I just saw that. That was a C.R. Patterson and Sons car. Because they were like the first Black manufacturer of cars back in the 1900s, and they specifically made their car red.
Interesting.
So when I
really?
saw that, I was like, oh, because those are the things that I look at when I watch
Wow.
movies. I'm all into like the background. What are they wearing? What are they doing? You know, continuity. I love
You know,
continuity.
that's one of the beautiful things about filmmaking that we're really looking forward to is that collaborative thing. You know that it, just like the gentleman said, that it's you get these people together and you get them jamming and you talk, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this, we could do it's it's amazing what
That
you
is a
can do when
great,
you've got other people who are at your level helping you.
great
It is.
observation. That is a
But
great
everybody else
observation.
mentioned everything else that I wanted to talk about. So
And
Okay,
I
well
there's,
let,
wow, there's still like
yeah,
eight
so
hands
we
up.
can go a little bit further and then we could have some more people, ask questions or make their comments a little bit later on. But let's see, do we have any what
Angelica,
textual
are you
stuff?
here? I know you had your hand up earlier and then we couldn't get you on.
Yes, I'm here. I'm so sorry. I
Great.
unmute and then mute again, and it was the whole thing. So I'm gonna try to be as concise as I can. This has been amazing. As soon as I walked out of the theater, I said, I want to hear what Professor Do has to say about this movie. I turned to my boyfriend. I went, I cannot wait for her to add this to her second place lectures. Um, as
Right.
who is a horror filmmaker myself and just a huge horror nerd, I love seeing horror movies that I feel like are going to be a gateway drug for people into horror. For people who just see horror as, oh, I don't like slashers or I don't like gore or anything like that. It's like, this is one of those movies where you can see that horror is not in a box. Horror can tell important stories, horror can be immersed in historical fiction. And I'm a huge, huge, huge vampire nerd. I loved how the vampires were handled. I love the symbolism of vampires being this cult of like, hey, it was almost like that weird, like, I don't see color thing, and it was just like really creepy. I love what you guys were saying about the invitation rule and how you had to uninvite people. Um, let's see, I wrote this down. Oh, and particularly the scene. And I know it's been brought up a couple times, and I remember during the second place course where you were talking about the difference between talking about important issues versus showing it in a traumatic way. And so I
Mm.
wanted to ask you specifically about the sound of the lynching. And to me, in my opinion, that was almost a middle ground between not including it but not showing it. And I wanted to know what your opinion was about the sound.
Now I know exactly who you are, Angelica, from my sunken place course at UCLA.
Yes.
Okay, so UCLA in the house. And absolutely, while that scene was happening, and I'm listening to the soundscape, it's very similar to me to what Jordan Peele and, well, Nia DaCosta did rather in Candyman, where you don't show the lynching, you don't show the racial violence, you show an animation instead. And instead of doing that, which would not have worked at all in this movie, we're hearing that like that those sounds are living in his memory. right? So as he's telling the story, we're hearing it seemed to me what he was remembering. And that is a great way to keep from traumatizing your audience, because nobody wants to be traumatized. And thank you so much for that. And we only have really, I think maybe one more.
Let's get one more. Let's get Megatron in there.
You,
Hey,
sir.
JS.
You, sir. He's actually, I'm not going to front. This is, he is one of the stars of our audio drama. We just did The Walker, which is on YouTube. And what did you think?
Unmute
we
yourself,
need to
buddy.
unmute you.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me better?
Yes, I can.
Man, it was just so much like there was fratricide that Coogler like went over because they killed their father. I back then at
Yes.
least, right?
Patricide, yeah.
And how also how he's able to use, because obviously like song and dance is like so powerful that's like kind of what releases the trauma, right? But he was also using that as a mechanism, like when Delta Slim was reliving his trauma, you could hear like his memory being enacted through like audio of his friend Rice being killed, being lynched, right? And there was so many send-ups like in the story where you know that he truly like Coogler's like really like a student of the craft, because like when the vampires were killed and he was waiting to ambush the Klansmen, and there was like the audio track that was playing, it was almost a combination of the theme of Omen, the theme of Phantasm, the theme of Suspiria, and kind of and Exorcist put together. Like, because I was hearing the note cues, and I was like, wow, like whoever did this like music, he combined it like within that like one piece. It's just so good. Like
it's just so good. Thanks a lot, buddy.
And
We'll
we haven't
talk about
talked
that
enough
more.
about the soundscape, the music. We haven't talked enough about the cinematography. Thank you so much.
And his anting because his mojo bag, I think, is what protected him not only in the wars in Europe and in Chicago, but from him getting bitten by his brother.
His mojo bag protected him for sure.
And when he took it off, that's when he died. Well, why you gotta do that?
Why you take it off though?
Yeah,
anyway,
why?
I mean, because people they just died. That's why I think.
Oh, T, I might have accidentally muted you. Unmute yourself, honey.
Sinners had an incredible impact. As we all know, we've been talking about that impact on us. But now let's talk about its impact on Hollywood. It's grossed more than $161 million at the box office. I feel like that was a day ago.
A week and a half.
45 million its second domestic weekend, only a 6% drop. That almost never happens. It's one of the smallest drops in recent cinema history. Most movies drop 30, 40%. Movies that aren't good drop 60%, or more. And it could finish its run making $300 million. And for context, Get Out made $250 million and Us made $250 million. And this is on a budget of $90 million, which is way higher than Jordan Peele has ever had. He's never worked on a $90 million budget. So when I saw that budget, I got a little scared. I read up. I was like, before I saw the movie, I was like, wait, how much did he get? I was like, 90, what the heck? But he made the use of it. Hun, talk about the trajectory of Ryan Coogler. Let's celebrate.
So what we're saying here, and this is very, very important for all you filmmakers out there and you people who are interested in this, that what you have is somebody who went from a very low budget movie, Fruitvale Station, and then he wormed his way into the industry by finding a property that was relatively exhausted but still popular, Rocky, and he reinvented that and talked Sylvester Stallone into appearing in it, giving him his blessing. That got him Black Panther, which earned over $1 billion.
And then, back in the day, we would have been doing this webinar about Black Panther.
That's right. So then he did Sinners. And so if you take a look at the progression there, you can see that if you've got it, that in combination with some other things, if you've got the storytelling ability, he has actually shown you a way to go from nothing to now he is a player. Because he owns that movie. He's going to own that movie in 25 years. He can set up his own studio. He's going to be a mini major. He's going to be, helping other filmmakers and so forth. So to see somebody learn how to play the system to create images like this that
And by the
become this
way,
powerful?
he did it, and no shade, except it will sound like shade, but he did it without being Tyler Perry.
He
And
didn't
I'll
have to
just
put
let
on the
that sit.
dress.
I'll just let that sit.
Yep.
Go on, honey. Go on.
No, so this is, it's important to not just look at the movies, but for those of us who want to get into the industry, to look at the pattern, the map or model that he represents is clear to anyone who wants to look at it clearly. I would suggest, I just rewatched Creed, and you can see the heart is so deep in there. And in each of these cases, he is taking his heart and he's combining it with a tremendous amount of energy and a tremendous amount of skill. And I believe that what we have and Hollywood is panicking because the old studio system is being shaken by these new young filmmakers and by all the different media, the different routes to consumption. But what Hollywood is panicking over becomes a potential opportunity for people who are nimble on their feet and will take a look and see how it's done and willing to do their work. So it's like, I am so excited about this.
I know how I feel as a creator who right now happens to be directing a horror, film. I keep saying short film, and people say, no, just call it a film.
Just call it a
To be
film.
directing a Black horror film right now, a horror film period right now, to be working on a Black horror book right now, I'm just filled with so much inspiration and excitement. And I know the artists on this Zoom are feeling the exact same way. I mean, it's like our moment has come, and the Afrofuturism of it all is so important. I mean, he did it with Black Panther. I used to teach Black Panther it's not the only cinematic Afrofuturism. There are a lot of, especially short films before Black Panther, who were like the examples of Afrofuturism I would use. And then there would be like The Brother from Another Planet, but that was made by an ally, that wasn't even by a Black director. So I used to say, Black Panther, okay, so that's the best example of cinematic Afrofuturism in some ways, because it had all the things, the blending of the ancient and the modern and
No, I would say that up until, at the time, there was nothing that was even in second place in a strong way. Black Panther broke the box open. Wakanda was visualized and realized at such a level to what a creative
and
mind.
that's what he
But
does.
this is him creating without, 50 years of comic book history to back up with. So what we had a chance, in some ways, for the first time, was to see Ryan Coogler unleashed.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I want to say who knew? I mean, we did know, but we didn't know. And this is an important piece. Like, why is this kind of storytelling important?
Now, in 1954 or something like that, George Pal made When Worlds Collide. And when yours truly was a young science fiction fan, I would watch science fiction movies. And this one is about the Earth being destroyed, and they build spaceships to save all the people worth saving, for all practical purposes. And you will notice that all of them were of a particular ethnicity that excluded yours truly. The subtextual message of this was not lost on me, and was one of the reasons why I became a writer in the first place. I wanted to build a place for me, or let alone what Ryan Coogler did, which is create a place for us.
And this is why the vampire, I know Coogler talks about the vampire trope as being attractive because of that temptation element. But then there's that cultural vampirism, which I don't even think he had to talk about in interviews because it's right there on the screen. I want your songs. I need your stories. Or the line about how white folks love the blues. They just, don't like the people who make it. And of course, I'm not talking about the allies.
And one of the
here.
things that I think is important here, sweetheart, is that we were lied about for 300 years. And I think that even some recent political history suggests that the waveform of those lies is collapsing and people are afraid. But people are also wondering, who are we? If art is self-expression, then of whatever demographic you are, you need to have the courage to realize that who you are is what it is that you have to put into your work. If you do something that's for you and your community, but you have that universal humanity involved, then even the people who are of the what the group that might be considered antagonistic, they want to know who you are. If you're not the lies, if you're not the stories, if you're not the distortions, who are you? They want to know what we are, because the real question of who it is that we are as a nation and as a world is based on what are human beings really. And if you have been marginalized, there is a way to look at that marginalization as your superpower. You can tell stories no one else can tell. And if you can find a way to tell them with sufficient artistry, you are going to sell, because there's going to be a hunger for that. It's not going to be another sequel, another what we've seen before, but you have to have the kind of experience and the kind of knowledge and skill that Brian Coogler brought, because he took something that could have been enormously painful and he found a way to make it entertaining.
You feel, and
That's
not
magic.
just that, but joy and
Yeah.
reflection and connection. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the power of cinema. I've been publishing since 1995, and I've sold a lot of books, and I've sold a lot of copies, like more than 100,000 copies of The Reformatory. It's my biggest seller yet. Like, I'm blown away by the response to The Reformatory, which is also Jim Crow horror, by the way. But more people have seen the 30-minute Twilight Zone episode that Steve and I co-wrote than have read all of my books combined, and I would say by a very wide margin. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Think about how I feel, honey. I mean, it's like more people have seen my Baywatch episode.
yes.
1 billion people saw my Baywatch episodes. It's like,
So
what am I going to do about that?
So I want to
But
talk
it's
to those of you who are like me, like you're a prose writer. You're trying to publish short stories. You maybe already published. You might have already published novels. You like to write, but you've never thought about, like, how do you write scripts? I was like that. I was on the outside looking in. People were optioning my books back in the day, back in the 90s, and I would just hand it over to people, and then I'd hear crazy stuff. Like, they first of all, they would never let me see the scripts. I was completely outside of the creative process. I did not have a seat at the table. And Steve and I have figured out how to get a seat at the table, and we want to help you figure out how to get a seat at the table too. So we want to be sure to mention, while Ryan Coogler is blazing this path for us and showing us that yes, the audiences are there, the audiences are hungry for very personal stories. He did Sinners because his uncle loved a Buddy Guy, because he was singing Wang Dang Doodle, and he wanted to do an homage to the power of Black music. And boom, here we are talking about all the things he wanted us to be talking about. And
and the beautiful thing here is that technology makes it possible for us to teach all over the world at the same time through video, through Zoom, but we also are doing a live. We have a classroom where you guys can come and hang out with us live, and it's actually going to be catered. If you live in the Southern California area, we invite you to come to the party there, because the route to mastery is you're always learning, you're always doing, and you're always teaching. So in order for us to take what we know and put it at the level where we can serve you and create the kind of images that we want to create, we need to teach. And you guys need to have insiders, people who are going through the processes that we're going through, so that if you'll listen to us, and we're listening to Ryan Coogler, and we're listening to Jordan Peele, we can find the gems in how to do this that can allow you to leverage your skill, your dreams, your pain in a way that turns it into art and turns it into success. This is an amazing moment. And
some of our
go ahead.
former students are here, and they can attest in the chat to our Afrofuturism course, which is actually, it's still available as a digital download. Instant, but the screenwriting course is a hybrid, and that means that we'll be teaching it on Zoom like this, but also in the classroom. And it's a 3-hour lecture where we're going to break it all down. So if you've never written a script, or you've written a couple, but you have a long way to go, or actually that's the perfect person. People who really just want to learn how to write scripts, story structure, characterization.
Yeah, we're going to start with story structure. That's where it all starts. Do you understand story do you have story and unconscious competence? Because you have to have the basics of story on automatic before you can jazz. Like you can't be looking at your fingers while you're playing piano or while you're typing, and still go into flow state. So we want you to take the task of becoming a screenwriter in bite-sized chunks, so we can actually, okay, master this, then master this piece, then master this piece, and now you start interfacing with the industry. It's that has rarely been laid out, and you're not going to find this in most MFA programs and in very few of these screenwriting seminars that are done, because very few screenwriting teachers are also active writers, and very few writers know how to teach. But we've done both of these things, and
Yeah,
we love both of these things.
I taught in the screenwriting MFA program at Antioch University in Santa Barbara. And a lot of that methodology is what we'll be using here. Characterization, talk about getting to know the characters and quickly, because in cinema, you're not going to spend 30 minutes hanging out with, actually, they do unpack it like character by character. Each introduction of the character in Sinners is its own little mini story, its own little mini tableau. How does he do that? How do you write compelling characters that your viewers or readers will fall in love with? How scripts differ from prose writing. So if you know how to write prose, that's a huge advantage. I mean, you have a huge advantage coming into a screenwriting program if you already know how to write a story in a beginning, a middle, and an end. But there are some
Yeah,
differences.
you have to understand that, because otherwise you're going to look at the movie from the outside in, and you're not going to understand. It's like trying to build a car by looking at the bumpers and looking at the paint finish. You have to understand the powertrain inside a car, the internal combustion engine, the way that the power is distributed between the wheels, the undercarriage. What is that in a story? It's structure. It's plot. It's understanding character. It's understanding the way plot and character interact. Look at what everybody's been saying about how important the characters were in caring about the horror. If you have these wonderful horror scenarios in your mind, but you don't know how to create character, and you don't know how to paint them and create a world that people care about, your story will lay like a dead dog in a ditch. It just won't
Wow.
matter how
Okay.
much creativity you have.
So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the common mistakes new screenwriters make. I've made them all, so I can speak from experience with that. The importance of visual symbols. We talked about some of those visual symbols from Sinners and how impactful they were. And I think the most important thing is our advice on how to bypass the gatekeepers and see your work come to life now. Someone asked me, what I would have done differently in my career if I had it to do over again. I would have been making a short film every year.
That was our mistake, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
When we met each other, uh, basically within 72 hours after we met, we were functionally engaged, and we sat in the airport in Atlanta holding hands, leaning our heads against each other, talking about how we could build an empire together. But the mistake we made was thinking someone was going to hand us the empire, that they were going to just
Yes.
recognize how wonderful we were and bring us loads of money. No, it's
No,
not
you
like that. You
No, man.
you
I mean,
have
and with iPhones now, and with the video editing suites, and with YouTube tutorials, I mean,
not
you
just YouTube
can make
tutorials,
your
but
own
you
stuff.
can make your own. And this is something that we're going to be able to do in this workshop for the first time, is lay out a path for someone to go from nothing all the way to being able to tell a studio, I've made a movie. And if you've developed your skill along the way by not trying to jump stages too quickly, the sky's the limit. And if you've got it, go get it.
And in the 3 hours, we'll have Q&A. And of course, if you can't be there the whole 3 hours, or if you can't even be there at all, just like with this, there will be a video replay available to you. And then we have the extras. Now, we just started this program. It's called Life Writing Professional. For the first time, we're workshopping our writing students. I've taught in MFA programs, Clarion. I've taught at Vona, Voices of Our Nation, and I know from my own experience with workshops when I was a college student that it really is the fastest way to grow as a writer, both giving notes and getting notes. So you get 2 months in our Life Writing Professional workshop. It's been going great with our Afrofuturism students.
It really has. And there are people who are paying $2,500 a month for this kind of thing. And we're not going to do that. We're going to do it. We're going to try a completely different model where people in those workshops get to be there because they really want to be there, and we will find ways to make it possible for them to be there. But you're going to get 2 months of that totally free, which will give you time to develop a piece of work and for us to give you live feedback on that work.
So you also get my collected essays on writing, whether or not you're interested in screenwriting. And by the way, you don't take a screenwriting class just because you want to be a screenwriter. You learn a lot about story structure, you learn a lot about visual symbols, and you also get Steve's Life Writing for Writers, uh, uh, The Outsider's Roadmap to Hollywood, which is
This is
again,
this new thing, and we couldn't have done this before. We're directing our own film, and we created a radio play, basically a radio play for YouTube. In the process of doing that, some doors opened and some lights went on about how someone who's got that creative spark, that creative urge, can light a fire and get all the way there. And somebody who's listening to this right now, if you can close your eyes and see yourself actually making a movie and you've just been looking for the right path, we're offering it to you.
and
This is
we're
the path.
offering it at a pretty low price. I know, well, it's just what can I say? It's a low price. It's $297 for all of that. We're realizing now that because we've added Life Writing Pro, the workshop group, that we will really have to raise these prices in 2026, but we haven't done that yet. And right now we're sticking for this course and for our upcoming horror writing course in September, $297. And of course, how do you do it? It's www.writerwebinar.com. www.writerwebinar.com. You can
It's
learn
going to
more
be
about
May
it.
17th at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 hours. It's going to be live via Zoom or live in person if you want to come and hang out with us in Upland, California.
Yeah, we're just outside of the LA County line. So if you live in LA or if you just live anywhere in Southern California that's close, make it like a weekend trip even, maybe stay overnight if you have a long drive, because it would be really fun to meet you. And our classroom is super cute. We had an okay classroom for our Afrofuturism course. Some of you were here, you know that. This classroom is super cute and we're going to have food. www.writerwebinar.com. And basically, we figure you might have some questions for us about the course. So I'm going to stop the share and just enable you to ask us any
Also just
questions.
the people who really want to say something about sinners, we can do that. Just
That's true.
www.writerwebinar.com.
I'm going to put that
CJ
in.
Lovelady,
Can you?
unmute yourself, my friend. You got it? We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? The button should be to the extreme left at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It says audio. Can you work that out?
Says only the host can unmute. So how come it's not letting us unmute you? It just says we can ask you to unmute. Oh, wait.
There we go.
Okay, there you go.
There we
you go.
are. We got it.
All right. So first introduction to you guys. So appreciate you guys putting this on. It's been great being here and listening to everybody. But I had a couple of points I wanted to bring up about centers that I haven't heard said yet, which is frankly surprising because we've had a lot of really, really good points brought up. The first is I wanted to kind of foot stomp in the film. There are only two people that refer to the brothers by their real names, Elijah and Elias, and that's their wives or their lovers, right? And I think that's a very, very strong representation of how men present themselves to the world, especially
Nice.
black men in the Jim Crow South. You had to be that tough exterior, right? It was very, very difficult to be vulnerable around people.
Yeah, you
So I thought that
remember
was huge.
that she said that he'd have to put the cigarette out to hold his son. You have to leave
Mm-hmm.
that smoke. She was telling me, he can't have his persona. She loves him, but the persona has to stay outside.
Which brings me to my second point, which is the fact that at the end of the film, while he's sitting there attempting to roll the cigarette, he's unable to do so. Right, his hands are shaking. If you go back and watch the entire film, he never rolls his own cigarette ever. He's also the one that's most on edge.
Yes,
Exactly.
PTSD.
Yep,
From the
PTSD from
war.
their time in World War One, right? He also never lights his own cigarette. So there were so many layers to this film outside of just the cultural and racial topics, right? Which were huge. But there were so many layers to this when you really dig into it, talking about the vulnerability of men, the vulnerability of soldiers and the way they come home and how they're treated, right? Turning your back on your culture to seek success, right? With them killing their father and going to Chicago and essentially
Yes.
assimilating themselves into Irish and Italian
Italian.
culture to attempt to make a future. It's just really, really well done and very, very smart.
And you're looking at what happens when you rewrite and
Mhm.
rewrite and rewrite. So yeah, thank you very much, CJ.
Great point.
No, thank you guys very much. It's been awesome.
You're
Great.
welcome.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we have some
Okay.
more time. So next is
Chantel Waltz.
Chantel Waltz. Let's bring you to the conversation. Ask you to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we can.
can.
Hi, y'all.
Hello.
See you. So, first thing about the movie, I put it in the chat, but I had the very distinct pleasure of taking my 86-year-old grandmother, my 11-year-old son, and my very melanin deficient husband to see the movie. And the reactions from all of them it just warmed my heart. I'm a writer myself, so to see how they embraced the horror and the art and the culture, especially my son. My son, he's amazing. He's a musician, so he was just in awe. And of course, his favorite scene was the scene of seeing the past, present, and the future. And he was like, "Mommy, what is that?" So we ended up having a long conversation about the cultural references, me explaining to him like the Bushmen in Africa and, what our culture really, really did and things that we don't see here because it's just not celebrated that often. So that was amazing. But to my question, because I do have a question, like I said, I am a writer and I wrote something, published it in 2023. And while watching this movie, I felt like Ryan Coogler and I did the same research. I felt like he was looking over my shoulder. So what would you say to a writer like myself who has written something with very, very similar themes? And I know that my work is a trilogy. So I have another book that I'm working on that goes with, my first book. But what would you say to someone like me who does not want to feel like, now that everything that we see is so mainstream and is so culturally relevant and is so transcendental, like what would you say to someone like me so we're not feeling like, oh gosh, like is this
Okay, well, you're talking
like it's already been done?
Yes.
Oh, I got one for you.
Everything
Yes.
has been done. But if you touch who you are, it will be different than anything anyone else has ever done. But you have to be willing to go into your truth. Tanari, I stepped on you. Go ahead.
Well, I think I have a pretty good example of that because it took me 7 years to write my novel, The Reformatory, and which I told you is sold better than anything I've ever written. But about 5 years into my writing process, 4 or 5 years into my writing process, I heard that one of my favorite authors, Colson Whitehead, was writing a novel set at the exact same reformatory called The Nickel Boys. And I knew the day I saw the announcement that it was going to win a Pulitzer Prize before anyone ever read it, because he's Colson Whitehead. Dang it. I got on the phone with my agent. I was in tears. Okay. And he said, just write your book. And that's my advice to you is don't worry about feeling like it's too similar to something else because no one else is going to write it like you write it. That's the bottom line. And my agent was absolutely right. There was room for that story and my story, and there is still room for other stories.
Thank you. Because when I walked out the theater, I was so full of emotion because the movie was good. But then I'm like, they said Hanks. And
No.
Mojo.
Look, now people just know what Hanks are. You don't have to explain it.
That's
it's
right.
fine. It's fine. So I'm glad you
Thanks
asked
a
that.
lot, Chantel.
I'm really glad you asked
Christopher
that. Okay, who's
Fuller.
next?
Hey, Chris.
Asked to unmute. There we go.
Unmute yourself. There you go.
All right. First off, thank you guys for hosting this and sharing all this great information. I do live in LA, and I plan to go to your seminar.
That
Oh,
would be
great. We'd
fantastic.
love to
We'd love to
see
see
you.
you there.
You know, just we've got 20 spaces in there. So make sure that you sign up. We'll just
All
make
right.
sure that you're one of the ones that gets to be there, because it's great to teach online, but it's so much
In
fun
person.
when we can actually have you in that room.
Yes, and also just meeting other like-minded people. I always say
That's right.
Well,
That's right.
networking is half the thing in screenwriting for sure. So yes.
So the two things that I want to bring up in regards to Sinners is first off, as my little side project during the pandemic, I started this project called the Black Music Project, and its mission was to show that the history of Black music is a story of America. Started that during the pandemic. Got a Webby acknowledgement, and was interviewed by the Lincoln Center to talk about
Congratulations. That's
the
amazing.
project. So you guys can go to blackmusicproject.com if you want to check
I
that
love
out.
it.
But the
Put it in the
story
chat.
that I want to tell very briefly is as a kid, I lived in Colorado, and every kid in Colorado knows the story of the Donner Party.
Yes.
If you're not familiar with it, it was these white settlers that were trying to
Yeah, I've got the
find a
cookbook.
fast way through the pass, and they went through in the winter in the mountains, and they ended up not making it and cannibalizing each other.
Yes.
So the reason why I was reminded of that story is that at the beginning of Sinners, what sets all this up? Well, the Choctaw Indians are, they're in pursuit of Remick, and they track him down and they find, where he's gone. And they try to warn these white people like, hey, look, if you come across, be very careful. Don't invite this guy in. And what? No, the Indians, white supremacy takes over, and they don't listen to him. Well, the Donner Party, a story that you don't hear so often, is that Native Americans actually saw them on the trail and went to assist them. They said, hey, it's winter, you guys aren't going to make it. The white people, they fired on them. They started shooting because they thought the Native Americans were going to. Now, this is a story, the Donner Party, that you don't often hear often. But as soon as I saw that scene in Sinners, I was just like, this is the Donner Party all over again. The Native Americans are coming to like, hey, Whitey, we can help you out here. But no,
Look, my
I've never
attitude
heard
is
that.
this.
That's
Yeah.
great.
I've
that's
never
terrible.
heard that either. See, but this is important. If you can take, we can laugh about that. If you can take pain and turn it into laughter or music or art, you have then processed it. It's like art is the cultural kidney in that sense. And if you do that, if you're willing to look directly at what hurts you and turn it into art, you have something that's saleable. Because everybody, what we want to know is, what is the world? What actually is the world? Not our illusions about it. Our comforting illusions are dispelled by palatable truth. So, just we can't wait to see you.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Bring your kidneys with you. Let's go on to Princess Hannah.
Princess, we didn't know that royalty was in the house. We can't spotlight you, but we will ask you to unmute.
I'm Princess Hannah from Chicago. And I wanted to know kind of you all's thoughts on Annie. Now, she seemed like she was a hoodoo priestess, hoodoo practitioner, but then, with the mojo bags and, the natural and, the different things. Definitely I got that she was hoodoo. And then at some points, I was like, okay, is this blended with one of the ATRs too? Oh, shoot, is she a witch? Like it wasn't really clear to me. Like, I know it was hoodoo, but it seemed like it was some other things going on too within her practice.
I would say she was a woman of power, and that hoodoo was one of her routes to power. But I wouldn't be surprised if hoodoo chose her because she had something. This is why she didn't want to be taken as a vampire, because she had the power. Not everybody can do what she did. It isn't just a matter of knowledge; it's a matter of inclination. Tananarive, what did you think?
I'm just gonna let that stand. Hoodoo is the only specific reference there was. I wouldn't go so far as to imply that she was a witch. But
No, I wouldn't.
it's in the eye of the beholder, though. Like you said, Brian Coogler can't tell you that you don't think what you think, you know. So everyone will interpret it in a different way.
And what about the Irish song too? The Road to Dublin or something like
Yeah.
that? Like, yeah, what was the? It seemed like they were really trying to not completely match, but definitely illuminate some of the similarities
Well, they
of
absolutely were. You know,
culture.
The Irish were often indentured slaves, and it came here after the potato famine. So there was enough similarity for the Irish to be able to make a case that, yeah, hey, we're more like you. Except that we'll notice that we don't see race, except that all y'all are going to do what I tell you to do. You know, it's like it's Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind was Irish, but she owned black people. So you can only take that so far. The analogy only goes so far.
No, you didn't say that.
Yes, I
You're
did.
funny. Okay,
All
so
right.
Jasmine, let's bring you on. I'm so glad more people are getting to speak up.
Yes. Oh,
Oops.
unmute yourself.
Asked to unmute.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, we hear you.
Can you hear me? All right.
Yes.
Yes.
Great. 3 points. I studied with both of you many years ago. It's been, I don't think, 2 decades ago. You both are excellent
Wow.
instructors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for hosting this, I appreciate you. One thought I had was that Sammy, Smoke, and Stack all got the freedom that they wanted in different forms. So for me, it was a happy ending. So I left the movie theater feeling, empowered and happy for them. And Remick was an excellent villain. I appreciate how he had his own motivations, he had his own backstory, and he made a compelling pitch. And even
Yes, he
warned them,
did.
plans coming in the morning, so you might as well join me tonight. So I appreciated that he was really well written. And I think if I had been one of the characters in the movie, I would have taken his offer. I would choose to be a vampire and munch on some Klansmen every night instead of
Can't blame you.
They made a compelling
as
performance
in
out
that
there. I was like,
situation.
oh,
Compelling case. You know,
it's like,
I think that a good movie about vampires, a creature like that, does make a case that, what is life? What is death? What is eternal life? What is the promise? What can we give you? When you create dilemmas like that, what do I choose? Who am I? I think you're touching something that is universal. And the urge to live, the urge to love forever, to stay young, so forth. It's one of the classic tropes of vampire movies. They offer you eternal life, and then relatively quickly they get burned up by sunlight. So it ain't all that eternal. However, the promise we saw Stack and Mary living on and staying eternally young and still loving each other. So it's like, wow.
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting case, and that was what Coogler wanted to do. Suzanne, is your hand still up? I think
Hello, Suzanne.
Hello, thank you so much for this. I just had
Great.
one really small observation that I had.
Please.
With vampire lore, usually they didn't have to ask for an invitation to a public space.
Oh, I
But
hadn't heard that.
yeah, I hadn't. Well, the thing that occurred to me was that through the music and through their interactions, they created a sacred space in that forum, and that through that sacred space, they had to actually ask for permission to come in.
Okay. Yeah, it was a place for us.
Okay.
It was a home. They owned it. It was their ground. So the vampires had to respect that. Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but I really do feel like Coogler did his homework. That's for sure. He thought
Yeah.
it through.
We felt that need for an invitation for sure. And I think also in conversation with a lot of the political conversations that are happening today, it just resonates. But yeah, you definitely need to ask permission to come in here in this place. So that is fantastic. And thank you, everybody. This has been incredible. We didn't even know it would go on this long, and so many of you would still be here this late. but clearly wanting to share the fellowship because there was a moment during the juke joint scene where, because I was by myself in the theater in the third row, I'm like looking at the guy next to me like, are you seeing this? Like I just wanted to.
And so if we're going to touch on this, then let me go ahead and talk about the one mistake that I think Ryan Coogler made, and that was one line of dialogue at the end. It said, "I ain't seen this the last time I saw my brother." I said, "Damn it! I was hoping for a movie where the two brothers, one dead, one undead, would go against Capone and the gangsters from Chicago, chasing them down into the Delta." And that's that's the TV movie version of Sinners, but I could see that so clearly, wanting them to be side by side, and now we don't get that unless Coogler cooks something up. But I don't have any major complaints. It's just wanting it to go on,
I
And
think
so
it's
this is one
perfect
of the.
as it is. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm
I
sure you're
would love
right.
that, but I don't need it, I guess is a thing. It would
No,
be
I
great, but I don't
understand
need
totally.
it. Yeah.
What we want is for people who are inspired by it to keep supporting other film of its kind, other art of its kind, and even more, create your own. The door is open.
That's it.
If you have creativity and no money, we can show you how to share your dreams with the world. It's the opportunity is there, and this is why Hollywood is scared, because the opportunity is there for everybody now. Technology has been a great leveler, and Ryan Coogler has shown you how to own your own 40 acres of film. So I just, hopefully we will see all of you guys at www.writerwebinar.com. We will see you on the 17th of May, either on video or preferably in person. Oh, Princess Hannah? Is Princess Hannah still? Oh, we already talked to her.
Yeah.
So
I think we're about out of here. I think
we're
we're
about
about
out of here. So
Time for dinner. I know y'all need to eat on the East Coast. No.
Let's remove the spotlights and have everybody unmute themselves and just say goodbye. This has been a wonderful time. Thank you for creating a sacred space, not a
Thank you for
troll in the
coming.
lot. Nothing but positive energy. That's what we love. We love you guys. We love doing this so much. Thank you for letting us share with you. And hopefully we'll see a bunch of you on the 17th of May. So just
Alrighty.
unmute yourselves and say goodbye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Unmute.
And if you're a horror person, we have our horror masterclass coming up in September. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Okay, you take care.